let's talk about the books that surprised me. I only have, I think, 5 books for this list, so this is going to be a shorter video for once. I really should do shorter videos more often, but I'm not very good at them. Now, I've already done the books that disappointed me, the books I had high expectations for that just like did not meet them whatsoever. So this is the opposite of that. This is the video about the things that surprised me in a good way. Things that I maybe wasn't expecting the most from, that I was just like, oh, this is actually decent. So I have not numbered these. This is just 5 books that surprised me. They're not in any order. Let's just get into it. Now, one of the books that really surprised me in 2021 was Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. I have a big hatred for Stephen King. My reading with him has been all over the fucking place. Truly just a roller coaster of emotions, because I have read probably 7 or 8 books from him. I might want to do a whole video on my experience with Stephen King and his work, because like, it's just been interesting. It started down here and it's actually gone up somehow in the last half of last year. I found 2 books by him that I really enjoyed. One of them was Dolores Claiborne. I actually picked this up because of watching Katie Coulson. She had such a rave review about this book and she was right. If you have not had success with Stephen King in the past, pick Dolores Claiborne up on audiobook specifically. I would never be able to read this book. There's no fucking way. I would not have got through even 10 pages of this. I would have hated it. But as an audiobook, it is phenomenally fun. Dolores Claiborne is about this woman named Dolores Claiborne. She is sitting in a police room being questioned by the police, and she is basically telling them her life story. Obviously, she has done something, she has committed some sort of crime, and she's telling them how she got there, why this happened, but she kind of starts a while back and kind of goes through this whole linear thing to how she got there. I really enjoyed this. I loved her character. I love the way that this was paced. I love the way it was told. It just like, the narrator does such a great job at playing this. It really does feel like you're sitting and watching a play of some sort. I fell in love with this character. She reminds me a lot of my grandmother. She's just kind of spunky. This woman has led an interesting life, full of turmoil, but one that isn't like ridiculous or outside the box. There's no paranormal shenanigans in this. This isn't one of those Stephen King novels. This is just about a woman and what she's gone through, and she's tough as shit, and I love her for it. And I really just wasn't expecting to like this as much as I did. I just feel like this was some really good character work from Stephen King. The second book on this list is The Keeper of the Lost City series by Shannon Messenger. I really fell in love with middle grade this year. Not a ton. I really only read 2 series this year, and that was Nevermore and Keeper of the Lost Cities, but I fell in love with those series so much. I was expecting it out of Nevermore because of how highly people rated it, but I really wasn't expecting it out of Keeper of the Lost Cities. First of all, the fact that it was about elves, for some reason, made it hard to take it seriously for me, because like, I just picture elves a certain way, and it just seemed so ridiculous. I just couldn't wrap my mind around how this wasn't going to feel stupid. And then there was the fact that it clearly felt like there was going to be a lot of romance in this series, and luckily for me, it has been so unbelievably slow burn that I'm on book 8 and they haven't even kissed yet. So that worked out to my favor, because I don't love romance things being shoved into YA or fantasy. It's just like, things that aren't supposed to be about romance, stop shoving the romance in there. I have romance books for romance, that's all I'm saying. These books have been an absolute delight for me, and they have been my comfort go-tos. I love the characters so much. I love this world so much. These books are about a young girl who finds out that she's secretly an elf. She thought she was a human, she's not. She gets spirited away to this elven world, and basically she has to take on this group who's trying to damage their world in some way. You know, it's a typical reluctant hero's tale. And I've just really loved it. I love all the friends that she gathers and her relationship with her adoptive parents. Like, there's just so many heartwarming things about the series that I've come to really love. There's only 8.5 books out there, and I have read them all now, so I can't wait until the next one comes out in November of this year. It is going to be such a long wait. Now, on a completely different side of the spectrum, the next book I have is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. The reason I didn't think I would like this book is because of all the freaking terrible reviews for it. Like, I saw so many people crapping on this book, and I kind of understand why. I don't think this book is for everyone, but I do believe this book was for me. This definitely falls to me on the more literary fiction side of horror. There is not a lot of horror in a large percentage of this book. It is more of a character study about Jade, our main character. To me, this was a bit of a love letter to horror and to horror fans. People who have gone through really tough shit and who've used horror as a way to get through it. I've loved horror since I was like a wee child, and I've used it to get through a lot of rough shit in my life. So I connected so much to this main character who just had this deep obsession with horror. And as the book goes on, you see that she's been dealt so many blows. She has gotten handed such a shitty hand in life, and she really does use horror as a way to distract herself from it, but also just as a way to understand what she's gone through and who she is. I also think that the cultural aspects that Stephen Graham Jones adds to all of his books is always so interesting. I love the way that Jade talks about the fact that she doesn't feel like she can be the final girl for her town because she's never seen an Indigenous final girl before. And like, I do wish that like this had been more of a moment near the end where she finally realizes that yes, she is the final girl and she's all she needs, and like that doesn't quite happen. But there is gonna be a sequel, so like I'm really actually excited for that. I definitely wasn't expecting a sequel to come out of this book because like I said, it's gotten such mixed reviews, but like I can't wait to see more of this. I think that every time Stephen Graham Jones comes out with a new book, you truly never know what you're gonna get. He writes so differently from book to book, and I think that's so freaking impressive. He really writes in a way that amplifies whatever voice he needs for that story. It's so interesting. And when the horror elements do finally come together near the end of this book, it's so good and different and unexpected, and like I loved it so much, the way it plays with different horror tropes. It was so good. I absolutely loved it, and it was such a delightful surprise. I will try not to ever doubt Stephen Graham Jones again. The next book on this list is The Atlas Six by Olivie Blake. This book blew me away. Obviously, this is a TikTok sensation. Everyone has been loving it, but I wasn't expecting to love it so much. Like, there was something about the way people were explaining it. It felt like it was going to be a little bit too magical for me, a little bit too on the fantasy sci-fi side of things, but these characters just pulled me in so deeply. The writing was so evocative, so beautiful, and like weirdly sensual. There was so much sexual tension between all these characters, and like, we all know how much I love that. This book is about a group of kids who have to take care of this magical library. But they're also going through a series of trials because while 6 kids get to go in, only 5 of them will actually come out. The way this plays out, the different dynamics between every single student, I feel like the way the author plays around with their different interactions is so fun and hot and weird. The characters that you think will gravitate towards each other actually end up like gravitating towards other characters, and like they just all have such different dynamics, and I love that so much. I love the way she explores those relationships. I will say I was right about the magical side of things. It doesn't necessarily work for me. There was about 30% in the novel where I was like, oh, so I'm not gonna like this, because it focused more on their individual studies, and I did not care about that whatsoever. But when those characters come together, that's where the magic is. And the last book on this list is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, I will say this one is only partially good because this series both surprised me and disappointed me at the same time. This series just tricked me overall. This book, when I first started it, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna like this, like, at all, because that first, like, third of the story, it was hell to get through. I did not want to read it. I almost DNF'd this book because it starts off with our main character, Darrow, and he has grown up on Mars. He's a miner. They're trying to terraform Mars so that a bunch of people from the other planets can move there or something. Eventually his wife dies, and he finds out that like a bunch of things that he's known his whole life have been a lie, and his wife dying just kind of becomes the push he needs to start his journey, and I hate that. All of that sucks. Literally every sentence I just said sucks, and like I had no freaking interest in any of it. But then he gets put in this Hunger Games style competition, which now I understand the comparisons to Hunger Games. I totally get it now, because in this first book, yes, absolutely. They end up in this, basically this war type scenario, but it's a lesson they're being taught at school, kind of. And it was so dark, so gruesome, but I loved it so much. I fell in love with so many of these characters. It was all so interesting and graphic, and like I had to check multiple times to see that this was a YA novel, because I didn't believe it, because like it really gets darker than you would expect for YA. It totally won me over. I fell in love with Darrow. Severo is my man, but Darrow's crazy brand of genius is just so fun, and he's so unique as a hero. I love that he's definitely morally gray. Like, he is not your golden boy. Like, he does some fucked up shit. He is sometimes selfish. He is sometimes crazy. He is not afraid to get brutal, but the people he cares about are the most important things to him. It's hard to explain, but I love this first book. The other two books, on the other hand, like, it tricked me, because the rest of the series is not at all like that. The second two books are fucking space politics, and like, I don't give a crap about any of that. And not only do I not care, but I can't follow along with any of it. So, did not like the other two books, but this first book was quite a surprise, and I think it's worth reading all on its own. If you're not into like Battlestar Galactica stuff, just skip the other two. Those are the 5 books that surprised me in 2021. I hope you like this video, and I hope we come back again soon. Bye.